All right. Well, as I said, it's good to meet you. How are things in Oregon today?
Good. Yeah, it's warmer today than it's been. We don't get things quite as cold as what state? I know your city because I always see the screenshot of your weather app, but what
Yeah,
state are you in?
I'm in Wisconsin.
Okay. Yeah. So we
So
don't
it's
we don't get that cold.
yeah, it's kind of central-ish Wisconsin, a little bit south, a little bit east of the middle, about halfway
Great.
between Milwaukee and Green Bay, and
Okay.
little less than an hour inland from the Lake Michigan.
Cool.
All
Have
right.
you lived there for like did you grow up there?
No, actually, I was born in Michigan, actually, which is why I'm a Wolverines fan.
Okay.
Grew up in Illinois because my dad teaches psychology at Trinity International University. That's where TEDS is also located, but he teaches on the undergraduate side. And when I graduated college, I started working. My first ministry position was in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, which is like just directly east of here, right on the lake. So we moved inland when I took the job here at the church 3.5 years ago. Well, I took the job 3.5 years ago. We moved 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah. So
Wow.
I basically spent all my adult life in Wisconsin, but grew
Yeah,
up grew up in Illinois, but we're born in Michigan. So just making my way around Lake Michigan.
that's right.
How
Yeah,
about you?
cool. Yeah, I born basically, well, I was born in California, spent
Okay.
a year there that I have no remembrance of. And
Wow.
then my parents moved up here to Portland and we've been here ever since. So I
Wow.
was raised just a little bit outside of Portland,
Okay.
in a town called Troutdale, little suburb. And now we live in Portland proper. And
Okay.
yeah, we're
Okay.
trying
Yeah.
to escape as quickly as possible.
So are you looking to move and go elsewhere then?
Um, well, right now, we are looking to just move slightly outside of Portland,
Oh, okay.
to a
Okay.
smaller suburb. Um, there's a big, so we have three kind of counties that intersect around Portland, and
Mhm.
the big one is particularly cumbersome to run a business in and stuff. So,
Oh, sure.
um, yeah. Also, I'm gonna just, are we like actually podcasting here so far?
I mean, I can edit, whatever we want to. But I mean, I'm of the just kind of let it roll and let
Just
people.
keep it, yeah, keep it good.
Yeah,
Just,
I'll probably include
cleaning
it all.
house. That's great.
But yeah, I mean, to maybe get a little bit formal ish, and just to kind of set things up, I've been trying to, my podcast is primarily me just kind of sharing my own thoughts about my own journey in business and things like that. But I've also been trying to interview people that I think can add value and are encapsulating a lot of the principles that I talk about, bringing it back to output, like who do I see who's like got good habits of output and putting stuff out there. So like I've had like my brother on, he's a personal trainer and in the fitness industry, and
Yep.
he's putting stuff out there and making progress towards fitness goals as well as towards his own business and trying to build clients. So we had a good conversation around that. And of course, you're somebody that, this is the first time we've really talked in person, but we've kind of stumbled across each other on social media as we're both kind
Yeah.
of, seems to me that we've latched on to the principles that Darren Doan and the things that he's talked about on the Doan cast, and each tried to
Yep.
apply that in our respective areas. So it just made sense to me to like, hey, here's somebody who's like doing the things that I'm trying to do and is doing a great job, and seeing his content all the time and making me excited to hear about like, okay, what kind of crawl space is he getting into today? And
Yeah.
just seeing the way that you're applying that into your context and thinking about, okay, how can I use that in mine as well? So it's just kind of been an iron sharpens iron. Thought it'd be a good conversation to talk about, kind of how you got into that and make some content that you'd be able to use and put out there so people that you might connect with in a business sense could get some of the story behind Pest Patrol. And at the
Yeah.
same time, my listeners could hear like, hey, here's a guy who's doing things that I'm talking about in a different way, but the principles are still the same.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Absolutely.
So you've been in Portland since you were a kid. How did
Mhm.
you get started into the pest control industry?
Um, so this is the second pest control company I've started. I
Oh,
started
okay.
one about 9 years ago that I did. It was like really, really niche.
Oh,
It
okay.
was trapping moles and gophers. So I don't know. Do you have
Okay.
moles and gophers there?
Um, I think we do. I'm not. I mean, they have never bothered me, from a residential standpoint. Um,
Yeah, right.
I mean, I
So, but we have a lot. We have a lot of them here. So we have a lot of
okay,
forest land here in Portland. Portland is literally just built inside of a forest.
okay,
So lots of woodland, and moles love woodland. And then we've got kind of more arid in the south of Portland,
okay.
and gophers love, kind of farmland, that type of stuff.
Wow.
Um, and so that's my initial kind of pest control journey was starting that. I was doing bookkeeping for my father-in-law, and
Okay.
he owned a chain of oil change shops called Oil Ken Henry's.
Okay.
So he was a franchise of Oil Ken Henry's. Um, and so I was doing
Did he
books for
start that
him.
franchise chain himself?
No, he was
Okay.
a franchisee of it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So there, you have Portland, and then just south of Portland is a town called Salem. It's the capital of Oregon.
Hmm.
And so he had six quick lube stores down in the Salem area
Oh, nice.
that he had built up. So he had been doing it for like 30 years. And
Hmm.
so I did bookkeeping and kind of general admin stuff for him part-time. This
Okay.
was like 9 years ago. And then I started this pest control business part-time because he was an entrepreneur. So he was really big on like, hey, just start something, just do something.
Hmm.
So I literally built it up part-time for like 4 years, and then I ended up selling it because we hit the point where it was like, I'm either going to go full-time into working with my father-in-law or full-time into this small
Okay.
business that I've built. And I felt like I had gotten most of what I needed and wanted to get out of the process of building a small business. Um, at least just starting it, creating the brand, learning some
Hmm.
marketing, customer service. But I hadn't had a whole lot of experience in the corporate, more franchise world. So I felt like that was the bigger value for me. So I jumped into that.
Okay.
And then he ended up selling that in 2020. So October 2020, everything was just nuts, and corporate,
Hmm.
it went and got bought out by a bunch of people. But basically, corporate gave him an offer to buy out his stores,
Okay.
um, and I was like, well, I can either start another oil change shop, which was a massive financial burden to do,
Mm.
and way over my head. Like
Okay.
commercial real estate stuff for that is just way out of my league.
Okay.
Or I could start another pest control company, but this time not be so niche on trapping
Hmm.
moles and gophers, but a straight up full-fledged pest control company. So I got all the licensing and certification for that,
Okay.
and yeah, and jumped in. So we're like a year and a half old right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize you get the Pest Patrol was that new or that recent. That's pretty cool.
Yep. Yep.
So how did you come across? I'm guessing maybe you stumbled across Darren Doan and content communication and brand building and that sort of stuff. How did that start for you?
Yeah. So I'm a Christian. I think that's fairly obvious
Sure,
in
sure.
most of my stuff.
Hmm.
And so I've for the last maybe 10 or 12 years, I've been very much a part of like following the Doug Wilson community and all that
Hmm.
stuff. And so I think the first, I don't know, like early documentaries from Darren Doan, like when he did like the Saving Christmas, uh, the Second Amendment one that he did,
Yeah.
the family one, but they grow
Mhm.
up fast, right? Um, and so I got really hooked on his stuff around those ones and Collision and all this. So I was just kind of generally following him as like, oh, he's a cool like filmmaker. And then when he made that big shift a few years ago to the hardcore content communication stuff, I've basically been following him since I found out about that, which was I think pretty close to when it started. I don't know, 2018 or 2017 or so. But yeah, I think I stumbled across I think he was on Cross Politic or something, and I stumbled across that and then found his podcast, and yeah, I've been following since.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I first heard about Darren Doan. Like I stumbled across Apologia Radio first back in like
Yeah,
2013. And so I heard about Darren Doan through Jeff Durbin because he would talk about showing the Collision
yeah,
documentary at the rehab facility where he used to work.
yeah,
And so I started hearing about him then, and I would get maybe some things through American Vision when David Shannon and Marcus Pittman were kind of over in that realm, and then had their Crown Rights Media, and Darren Doan would
yeah,
come in. I think I watched the video that he put out, or he was doing a talk or something like that for maybe it was a lot of homeschool students or something, and he talked about the 30 Sunrises Challenge. And so yeah,
yeah.
I kind of followed along here and there as well. Watched the Keepin' Bear and I can't remember what the name of his family home movies documentary was.
That one, they grow up fast.
They Grow Up Fast. That's it. Yeah, yeah. So we watched that one. So I just kind of have followed along, and then I don't think I saw the podcast until they started releasing them on the Fight Laugh Feast network.
Oh yeah,
Like in the spring. So like I saw, I haven't been able to attend any of their conferences or rallies, but I've been, a club member, so I've been able to go back and watch. And so I saw Darren Doan's talk, which was only like 7-8 minutes long compared to everybody else, was like 45 minutes, hour 15, something like that. He's just like 7-8 minutes, pulls out his phone. It's like, you need to be on this or you don't exist. And that's all he needed. So that just kind of got my wheels started turning, late spring and into early summer, and just bit by bit, just tried to find ways to implement it. And that's, been my story ever since. So it's been a 7, 8, 9 month, no, not 9 yet, 7 or 8 month journey for me so far. But that's
yeah,
cool. So how have things been going for you? So you've been trying to implement some of these things for a while now, is that right?
yeah. Well, and to back it up, even before Darren Doan,
Mhm.
Gary Vaynerchuk was really the initial inspiration for me with content creation. But
Ah,
again, so I stumbled across Gary V, like maybe 2015 or something.
oh,
But
okay.
I was in the process of, I had then moved to the director of operations role in that oil change
Right.
franchise. And I literally they had your hands completely tied.
Sure.
So like I reached out to their advertising team. I'm like, can I start a Twitter account for my shops? Can I start anything? Can I do a YouTube? Can I do
Mm-hmm.
even just documenting what I'm doing? And they're like, no, if it has our brand associated to it, you may produce nothing without all of our approval first.
Oh
And they
man.
basically, yeah. So they were pretty unwilling. They're like a global company, so they
Right.
don't want me messing up their brand. That's fine. Um, but so I really was like, I was chomping at the bit to do this. And then when I initially launched my business, everything was just so crazy starting this business,
Mhm.
that it wasn't even really on my radar. Like I had
Sure.
always wanted to do it, back when I had my Cush office gig. And then I launched into crawling under people's houses and had no time, and everything, it was
Yeah.
like just total chaos. And so it hasn't been until kind of I hired a couple employees that first year, and I've kind of got my feet under me a little bit coming into this, second year, and not totally drowning anymore. And now I'm like, okay, now, how can we add some fuel to this fire and do content stuff? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my journey's been a little weird in that regard. But yeah, I've only been implementing it. Gosh, I mean, it hasn't been more than 3 or 4 months, maybe.
Okay.
I mean, ever since I started appearing on LinkedIn was my first
Hmm.
real place where I was consistently posting.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So
Did I
I've
just
been
take
probably
us way off
following
track?
you about as long as you've been doing it then.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
that was
cool.
right. That was like right when I started.
Okay.
And I kind of found you and some of the other guys that are in, I don't know, that same circle.
Yeah. Yeah. These followers of the Domecast in one way or
That's
another.
right. That's right. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So how is that going? Like, have you noticed any difference so far? Like, are there any success stories, or is it still kind of in the grind and plant seeds stage for you?
Yeah. Definitely mostly uh, planting seeds, right? Um, but I mean, yeah, I've had countless success stories already. Um, we've gotten a lot of business from, especially through the LinkedIn side of it, because a lot
Cool.
of my stuff is like property management companies, right, that
Hmm.
need service and stuff. And a lot of times they'll have a vendor that they use or a couple vendors, and like they're not super thrilled with them. They don't really like them, but they don't have anyone else, and they don't have time to go and find someone else. And
Sure.
so when they get pinged with a notification in their inbox that, hey, here's this new pest control guy, and then they're able to watch all the content, build a relationship, build trust. It's been
Okay.
amazing. Um, so
Nice.
even in the short time, LinkedIn, especially with content for me, has been very, very beneficial. And also Facebook. I do a lot of posting on Facebook, sort of in my personal friends,
Hmm.
feed, and that's been really helpful in just building my brand and reputation. And I maybe have 200 or 250 friends on Facebook, but it's really solidified like my sort of reputation and place within my Facebook community. So I've gotten quite a few of just my own friends that have reached out. Hey, come do my crawl space. Come help me with this, um, because I've been posting a tremendous amount of content in there. So yeah, so I've definitely seen quite a bit of success. But I would say, Mark, the main like kind of my main success so far that I've found has been narrowing in my brand.
Hmm.
Um, like figuring out these are the things I like, these are the messages that I feel are just bulletproof and that I can push all the way down.
Hmm.
Um, Here's like some trouble areas. This is what I'm bad at, this is what I'm good at.
Yeah.
So a lot of that, like just figuring out your messaging, figuring out what you want to stand behind. I just
Yeah.
would never have found out if I hadn't posted 500 pieces of content.
Right.
Like
Right.
just the process of posting the content has really, it has shaped and honed where my business is headed.
Hmm.
Not because I'm getting all these customers necessarily, which it is bringing in some, but just
Yeah.
because it's helping me to be more clear
Hmm.
on how I want to communicate. So
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely found that too. I'll post something on, and some things will be like, yeah, I really like that. I mean, I like, the way that I did it. I like some of the creative things that I did with it, but I really like this as a representation of me. And then other things I'll post or whatever, like, yeah, I said that, and that's the message that I came across. And yeah, that's probably what I was thinking that day, but I don't know if that's really represents, what I
that's
what I
right.
want to. I don't know if that really says exactly what I want to. And, maybe that is what I was thinking that day, but the next day or whatever, that's not quite where I'm at anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely is a refining process for yourself, and helping you to figure out exactly what kind of content you want to create and what kind of message you want to convey. So that I've definitely found that to be the case for myself as well.
And even personally, like I've had a couple brothers like pull me aside and obviously some of the insight and criticism you have to take with a bit of a grain of salt.
Hmm.
um but like, I mean, I've had brothers that have been like, hey bro, love the grind, but like, hey, some of those posts are coming across as like really cocky, or
Mm.
what, and had some really helpful, like, not, a lot of their insight is like, hey bro, you really just need to post less, or that type of thing. Which again, some of that I take with a grain of salt, but some of it is like really good at just shaving off some of the edges of like, oh, that,
Mhm.
no, that was like, I was in a bad mindset when I posted that. I was just trying
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
show off about something I did. Like, thanks for calling me out on that, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so that's been really cool, just personally. And it like in ways that I would never have probably gotten that feedback,
Yeah.
in just a normal setting when I'm just interacting, because I'm not generally going to come across as super like braggadocious.
Yep.
Um, but when, social media is really good at drawing out the essence of who you are, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so if you're a liar, you're going to lie on social media,
Yeah.
right? And and I think that's good. I think it helps people. It helps distill who you are, and it helps people to be able to pinpoint, like, oh, hey, maybe you should work on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. I was just having a conversation with somebody recently about, your news feed, um, and how, there's pros and cons with everything, but one of the pros of having an algorithm that pays attention to what you're doing is that, it shows you more of what you tell it to show you. Um,
Mhm.
so like when you are liking or commenting on certain types of content, it's going to show you more of that. And so just being able to be more intentional about, like, yeah, I do want to hear more of this. I do want to see more of this, either because it's helpful, it's educational, it's inspiring, or this is maybe some content that represents some of the best of what my opposition is. And so I'd like to interact with more of what I disagree with, but it's presented and represented by somebody who's articulate and is actually
Right.
thoughtful, and I'm going to get good, helpful challenge from those places. So like, I feel like my news feeds, whether it's on Facebook or what I see on LinkedIn now, or what even comes at me at TikTok, by this point, most of the stuff that comes at me even on TikTok, which is a little bit crazy and wild, is still like, yeah, a lot of that stuff is good or helpful. Like, Elon Musk, or Jordan Peterson, or Jeff Durbin or Douglas Wilson. A lot of the stuff, I still have to swipe through some nonsense, but a lot of the stuff that's coming at me is like, if I do pause and watch this quick thing, it's something that's still going to be encouraging or helpful or motivating or something along those lines. And
Yeah.
I feel like I don't get as much negative stuff on social media as some people, complain about. And I think it's just because I don't interact with the nonsense very much. I just kind of skip over it. And so the algorithm
Yeah.
goes, okay, I guess I won't show you more of that stuff.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And I sort of, uh, I enjoy carefully picking fights.
Sure.
And so I tend to get myself into trouble sometimes, anyways, with that. Um, but usually that's because of what I'm posting, not necessarily because of what I'm, uh,
Okay.
interacting. Yeah, I'm the same way. I just like if I don't appreciate what the person has to say, I usually just kind of ignore it. So.
Yeah. Gotcha. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I don't know, didn't know how much time you still
No,
had
you're good.
today,
I'm
but
I'm pretty flexible. So
okay. All right.
yeah.
So as you've kind of gotten into it for the last few months here, do you feel like you've kind of have found a rhythm in terms of, this is how much time I can devote to this part of the business? I mean, obviously you got to make time for getting into those crawl spaces and making time for setting the schedules and
Yeah.
probably doing the books and all sorts of stuff. So how have you kind of come to, kind of set a routine and maybe even triage sometimes, and just like, okay, I at least need to do this when it comes to the content creation side of your business?
Yeah. I think so the short answer is no, I have not figured out that
Okay.
currently. Um, I've sort of more jumped into another season of absolute chaos. Um, uh, but I'm I've got like a schedule for the types of content that I would like to have put out each day, but I'm still trying to hone that in. So like one of the things I'm actually implementing this coming week is I'm going to start doing more ride-alongs with my guys again, so that I can video content them and their work, so
That's
that
cool.
it's not just seeing me sitting in my office or seeing me in my front yard or whatever it is, just trying to make content, getting more out in the field so that it's just more useful to people, more enjoyable. They get to see the team. The guys feel like they're able to really get brought into that process. So that's one thing I really want to do more of. And then, so hopefully this isn't a complete fail of an answer, because again, I answered no. I'm bad at this. But I want to do better at like batching. So doing, Mondays, I'm going to record 3 podcasts, and then that I'll be able to post those throughout the next week or 2 weeks. So I'm still figuring out how to do that well and how to manage that. But it is basically at the top of my priority list of sort of tasks and roles right now for myself. And so I'm putting a pretty high premium on it. And I feel a sense of urgency because you kind of get that exponential growth over time as you're putting out this content that will exist forever. I do feel a sense of urgency to sort of just put it out, figure out how I'm going to fit it into all the rest of my schedule as I go. So I'm learning and growing in that, but I would say I have not figured out really how to balance it well yet.
Yeah.
Just being honest.
And I've never been, a traditional business owner of any kind, or really had much experience with that. I don't think I never even worked, in a small business context as an employee. But it's seemed to me, or become apparent to me, that, a business owner who has some employees, it seems to me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that his primary role is really creating work so that his employees have jobs.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, marketing, making those connections, getting things set up so that, Monday morning comes around and the guys have, good, honest work to be able to do to earn a paycheck to support their families.
That's right. Yeah. And then creating, you've got like the sales and marketing side that if you don't do, your business just dies.
Right.
And then assuming you have enough business, then you have, the business owner and management's role is to create the processes and procedures by which people can actually win in their jobs. Right.
Yeah.
Because it's great to have all the sales, but then if your team doesn't know what the heck to do, then it's pointless. Right. So but absolutely, that is I think, especially right now in the business, it being so young, like my guys know what they're doing. They're trained pretty well at this point, and they're extremely trustworthy. So my main task is not as much overseeing and managing them, because I just trust them with everything I have, but is more building the business itself.
That's good. And that requires a certain skill set too, is to have those people skills and to know when you can trust people that much to delegate so much that you can be freed up to work and focus on those other things too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. So do you have any words of wisdom or general advice for someone who maybe isn't in the pest control industry, but someone who is a business owner who is maybe learning about content creation, wondering like, is this something that I want to get into? And how would I do that? Any words of advice for somebody in that kind of a situation?
Yeah, so to take the content creation side of that, my advice would be to do it. Find people that are doing it well and follow them, even if they have nothing to do with your industry. We connected over LinkedIn, and that's been one of the things I've found is, like, for myself personally, the creative process, like keeping inspiration high, keeping motivation high, keeping like my creative mind rolling, is very much predicated upon like following guys like you that I literally have not, like, I mean, you're Christian, and you do content creation, but like, I don't know you from Adam outside of that. Right.
Right.
But yet, like, we've built up a relationship on multiple social media platforms now, and you're part of, not that like I don't use you, but like, you're part of my creative process. Your content is, you know, and Darren Doan is, and
Hmm.
Gary V is, and
Yeah.
all these different people that are part of your feed. And so I think surrounding yourself, if I could do this all over again, I would, yeah, just surround myself with people that inspire me, that motivate me to do that well, to show me how to do it, to
Yeah.
inspire me on the days that I feel like crap and don't want to do it. You know, that I can go and see, like, he woke up today and he went and ran in 0-degree temperatures. You know, so I need to stop being a baby, right? Like it's great. It's community is what it is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It really is.
so that would be on the content side, and then just, yeah, jumping in and just creating. Darren Doan says it, Gary Vee says it. Just create, and then like you figure it out.
Hmm.
Like, you know, just from necessity, you figure out how to do video editing, you figure out how to do audio, you figure out how to do photo editing. Like,
Hmm.
you figure out tips of what works, what catches the eye, what things people engage with,
Yeah.
what things fell flat on their face, what things make people really mad. You figure all that stuff out
Yeah.
only by doing, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so that would be my encouragement, is just do it. Take criticism seriously, but with a grain of salt, and recognize that you're kind of on the cutting edge right now of what is coming down the pipeline for the
Hmm.
internet.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people to see it. It's hard for them to be gracious to it. But it's gonna hit them smack in the face.
Hmm.
And so they're gonna see in 10 years, like, holy smokes, I missed the boat on this, you know. So encourage them to come, but also, like, when they push back and say, hey, you're posting like 5 times a day, I don't see anything in my newsfeed except Pest Patrol. Like, yeah, I'm I have kids, like I have 4 kids, you know, I have a
Yeah.
rent to pay, like, you know, I apologize. You can unfollow me if you would like.
Have you had anybody say any of that to you?
Yeah, I've had people say, yeah, you know, man, it just feels like everything I see is your business. Some of them have been saying you really need to stop. Some of it have just been saying, wow, you're posting a lot. But what I ask them is, I say, how many followers do you have? You know, Instagram. You're the only thing I see on Instagram. I'm like, how many followers do you have? They say, I have 124 followers. I'm like, well, that's your problem. Like, nobody, most people have way more than that. Like, your average Instagram user, you know, has hundreds and hundreds or thousands of followers if they're consistently engaged in that community, right?
Mhm.
So, like, um, most people are going to be seeing thousands of posts, thousands of advertisements. So your 5 is not going to do any damage to them by and large.
Right. And the way Darren Doan puts it, it's like, it's a swipe. Like, if you don't want to
Yeah,
look at
that's
it,
right.
it's a swipe.
Yeah,
I inconvenienced you this much.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and it's just the way the world. Yeah, it's just hard. It's hard for. It's. I think it's tough for people to. Um, again, when they don't have responsibility for building up your company,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Like, the reason why I post, I enjoy posting, but I post because I'm trying to build a company. I'm trying to make sure that my team has, you know, food. And
Right.
Google advertisements are so ridiculously expensive right now. I did Google ads. I spent $80,000 on Google ads last year.
Oh man.
I've done it, been there, done that.
Hmm.
But it's so expensive,
Yeah.
that it's just not worth it, right? So I'm like, so if you would like to come and, uh, you know, spend that money on the Google ads so that you don't have to see my six Instagram posts, like, then
Right.
by all means, I'll stop posting. But then, you know, until then, like, this is how I'm going to build my business. So
Right. Yeah. And you and I we're both trying to make posts that hopefully nobody really minds to see. At the very
yeah,
least, they're like, oh, that's interesting, or that's kind of
yeah,
cool. And it's like, even if like
yeah,
it's not going to lead to anything in regards to business, like, oh,
that's
hey,
right.
that's cool that Gabe's doing that today, or that Mark did that today, or this is what he's doing with his running, this is what he's doing with his family. And we're always trying to add value in our posts. So hopefully, we continue to get better at that too, so that even if people are seeing our stuff all the time, they're happy about it.
That's right. Yeah, and I would say one of the things I've found in that regard is you have a lot less catching up to do when, like, particularly on Facebook is where most of my friends and family live.
Sure.
And so like I'll get together like at a party or a family reunion, and like people will just be like, "Hey, so how did that crawl space job go?" Or, "Hey, I
Right.
heard you're doing this." And it's like, "Oh wow, we don't actually have to really catch up. You've been staying current with what's going on in my life." Like I know that you have that big race coming up in like a
Yeah.
month, right?
Mhm. At the
I
end of the
know
month. Yeah.
more, yeah, I know more about what you're doing than, my uncle that's not
Sure.
on social media, that I
Mhm.
just happen to never interact with, right? I don't know what he's doing at the end of the month, but I know what you're doing, right? It's amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. Well, I don't know if I had any other questions. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add. I can let you get back to the family, but I just really enjoyed hearing, your perspective and getting to know a little bit more about the man behind the posts that I've been seeing. And it was really cool to actually hear you touching on at least two or three different things that I've done podcast episodes on. I don't know if are familiar with mine at all, but at the end of the summer, I think is when I started. My first episode was Just Start. So it was like I was preaching to myself
Yeah.
at the same time as to anybody else who's thinking about like just starting something, whether it has to do with business or content creation or whatever it is. I'm trying to keep, my principles applicable to anybody who's just like trying to do more and get outside of their head more in whatever way it is. And so like the first principle is like just start, like just do something and start learning by doing. And so that was something that came up in our conversation today. And I'm just like there it is. That was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's huge. And I think a lot of people need that. They just need, the spark plug. They just need to start the thing, and then a lot of the other stuff figures itself out. Um, I'm curious, on your end, you know, um,
Yeah.
I so I know you're a pastor at a
Yep.
church, right?
Yep. Youth and
And
counseling. So I'm an associate
you,
pastor.
okay, okay, gotcha. Yep. Um, and then you are selling products through your business, right?
Hmm.
And I'm curious how, obviously this is your podcast, but um, if I'm allowed to ask,
Of
I'd
course. Of
love to
course.
hear how that's going for you, what you've seen. Have you seen effects of your content stuff within your church community, and how has that affected your business, and all that?
Yeah. Um, so maybe just kind of back up to when well, I guess I should really go back 3 years to when I was between jobs. um, I was working for a parachurch youth ministry in Sheboygan. So I was just primarily doing youth, but in a parachurch context, not in a church context. And I was there for a good long time and enjoyed it, loved it. Great environment to be in, and the position really fit and suited a lot of my abilities and gifts and stuff. I mean, I our director asked me to put on like instead of doing like a 5K fun run type fundraiser, he's like, hey, could you like basically build like a mud run, like an obstacle course, like on our property? We had like 17 and a half acres or so there, and a pond. And so we would go through that. And I was like, you really want me to? Like, yeah. So like, it was just like a lot of that kind of stuff where it just was, right in my wheelhouse in so many different ways. And my time came up. So like I got 11 years there when most ministry directors got like 3, maybe 6. But my term did eventually come up, and I needed to find another job. And it took a while. It took a little longer than I thought it was going to, but that was when I was interviewing at the church here, but also looking at other avenues, like what are the different ways to make money. I've only really been in a ministry context. If I needed to generate income and wealth myself, how would I go about doing that? And it's like, if I can't get employed somewhere, what other
Right.
options are there to me? And so there's a bunch of different things that came along the way, and ended up getting connected with some folks who were doing things with the Amway business opportunity in a way that maybe some other similar network marketing companies, or maybe even other similar Amway folks would do it in a way that maybe I couldn't connect or resonate very well with, and go like, yeah, it's not illegal, it's not illegitimate, but it's just, it's just not the way that I perhaps want to go about things.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
like the way you guys are doing it, yeah, I see that. And so while I was, still in the process of getting, hired at the church, I was also pursuing that, and I thought it was a good thing to have a diversified income. Ecclesiastes, I can't remember, I don't know if it's 7 something, talks about, invest in 7 ventures, even 8. And so like just the wisdom of having a diversified income. And so like I've also been in the process, of listening to Apologia Radio and Cross Politic and things like that, and just developing more wisdom around, economics and wealth creation, and American vision. That'd be another big one too, that's kind of really affected me. And so I've come to think about politics differently. I've come to think about economics and business differently than I used to. And that's kind of been like a decade-long journey. And I've just kind of found like I've come to embrace some of these things in theory. And this has kind of been, I guess, low-hanging fruit for me to be able to, because the barriers to entry are so low. You talked about like, this big financial burden to take on, like a franchise opportunity or something like that. Like, because the barrier to entry is so low, you get a lot of nonsense. But it does allow for anybody to be able to get, just like social media. Like, it's easy for anyone to set up an account and post stuff, and you get a lot of nonsense that gets posted. And so a lot of people are like, oh, social media is stupid. It's like, well, not if you do it right. So I've come to find that, the direct selling industry, network marketing is kind of the same way. Like, yeah, there's a lot of nonsense, but it doesn't have to be that way. So it's just kind of been like my own journey of like trying to live more consistently with what I believed in theory. So being able to get more involved in politics in the way that I think a Christian is supposed to, being able to get involved in the area of business in a way that I think a Christian is supposed to, and that's still available to me. To do much else, like I would have to move away from being in ministry or being a pastor and go into something full time. This allows me to do it part time. And it's very decentralized and kind of democratized, and allows me the freedom to do things differently. Like, I don't have to do things the way everybody else in this industry does things. I am kind of finding out that there are some social media guidelines that Amway as a corporation has. I think there is some similar concern, like, you are representing our global corporation, and we don't want, any loose cannon just kind of going off. And so I get it. I understand that and respect that. So I'm kind of trying to find the line, not in a rebellious kind of way, obviously, but in a way where I'm not gonna, upset anybody. I'm not gonna be in breach of contract. I'm not gonna set off, any red flags. And if I, were to make a slight infraction here or there, by producing so much content, and especially a lot of content around not just products that I represent, but who I am and how I'm trying to do things, that people would be able to say like, okay, yeah, maybe he technically, crossed a line here or there with the content that he's making, but the way that he's going about things, like he's being the type of brand ambassador we would want to. So I want to make it hard for for anybody to slap my wrist if I were to commit some kind of an infraction.
Yeah.
So I haven't really had very many people. I don't think I've had anybody come up to me and say, "Hey, I think you're posting too much." The only negative stuff that I've gotten is like my brothers maybe just kind of being a little bit slightly snarky and their use of the term output habit or something like that, or I might I might whip out my phone or something like that and take a picture or get a little bit of video or something like that. It's like,
that means it's working.
I don't know if I want to end up on the output habit or something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's just like, tongue in cheek, good humored, not in any way conveying like, hey, we think what you're doing is wrong or stupid, or, it's just, it's just the just kind of the Robinson humor and way of, messing with each other a little bit. So, I haven't really had anybody in my church take me aside and be like, concerned about, what I'm doing. I didn't plan it this way, but I when I, first started thinking about what Darren was saying and things I was listening on the podcast. At first, it was just kind of like motivational and thinking about like, okay, the hustle, the grind. Yeah, I get it. I mean, that's what I try to do with this business anyway. That's what I try to do with ministry. That's what I try to do with everything. So I wasn't really thinking about how to like really implement anything he was talking about practically early on, like in those first episodes. I'm just kind of thinking about his stories about being a filmmaker and just kind of drawing principles from that and applying it. But then like he's getting into social media and content creation. And like, I started to think like that might actually, there might be actually be some practical application for me here. And I wasn't quite sure what it looked like. And so like, I think I did, I did something on this that I think you saw, where I was just kind of going through my journey and kind of documenting that and talking about that, where like, I just started with posting a short video on Facebook every day, just like, and that's where the output habit came from. Just like, I just need to get thoughts out and just put it out there, not really with a ton of strategy, not like thinking about where it was going to go, but I just knew like I needed to start somewhere and I needed to start doing this. So I think by doing that, and of course it wasn't connected, to business, it wasn't connected to Amway at all or anything like that. Not that I was trying to be sneaky about it or anything like that. It's just, I just need to start somewhere. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know exactly how to apply it, but I just know that learning to put things out there and to communicate is just going to be good in general, just across the board, having this skill and developing that. So I just started doing that, and people responded very positively to that. It's very non-threatening. It's just documenting things, a thought of the day basically. And so it just kind of has evolved and refined. I went kind of from that to taking on the kind of like 30-day challenge that Darren mentioned in one of those early podcast episodes. Like, okay, I need to create something from a video standpoint and just create it and post it and just make sure I do that every day. And so sometimes it has to do with family, sometimes it has to do with exercising, sometimes it has to do with just whatever it is that's going on. Just document, don't create. Like, don't worry about like focusing too much on the subject matter, just what's going on, document it, find a way to be creative and utilize the storytelling aspect. And so it was in that I started to try to, get a little bit strategic and like, okay, what are products that I use? And so like in those 30-day challenges, like I did like a commercial for my Adidas shoes because I really like them. And so like I did one for like our Adventure Force, that's not Nerf, but Adventure Force, guns that we like to use. And so just developing the skill set of being able to present something in a positive way with integrity. And like, okay, I think I can do this with the products that I represent as I continue to just have this habit of building up things, promoting things, being positive about things in general, and being able to basically build a brand and reputation of, being somebody who can articulate the value that something has to offer people, whether it profits me or not, and just trying to be really good at that and produce content around that, so that when I'm promoting something that it does affect me financially, it's maybe not seen with as much suspicion because I have that brand, I have that habit of talking up things with integrity in a trustworthy way, whatever I think might be of benefit to people. So right. I've had some success as I've gotten more comfortable. Again, it's been very gradual, maybe probably a little too slow. I'm maybe still a little too hesitant, a little too reluctant to talk about things or bring up things that are more directly connected to the business, whether it's just a fear of man issue. People hear Amway and have issues with that, or like, oh, he's pushing products, or even just more recently, just trying to make sure I'm not crossing lines in terms of what I'm posting when it comes to Amway's social media guidelines. So there have been a number of things that have maybe kind of pushed me into the safe zone, taking a picture of myself every morning before going out running, like, okay, like that's safe, like, right. But I mean, it's still low hanging fruit. It's not like it doesn't have any value whatsoever. And I do get feedback from people like yourself who say like, hey, that inspires me, and that's, I always get positive feedback about that sort of thing. I haven't gotten a lot of like, hey, it kind of seems like you're boasting. It kind of seems like you're bragging. And I've tried to communicate as much as I can, not just what I'm doing, but why I'm even sharing what I'm doing, to hopefully get ahead of some of that stuff. But maybe this is a long answer. I
That's
have
great.
gotten some people asking me now about, my business. So how is your business going? Like, before creating content, that person probably wouldn't have even known I had a business,
Mhm. Yeah.
and people asking about products. And I've made some sales, from, again, two people that would have never known that I even had a business if I hadn't been putting out content. So slowly but surely, like, there are leads being generated, whereas before, a lot of the tactics or the strategies are, you have to, deal with people that and so being able to communicate to somebody that I have a business, that I have products to offer, and potentially sell people products. Like, how do I communicate to the people that I know that I'm not just trying to leverage my relationship with you? Like, I don't want you to buy something from me just because we know each other. It's like, I
Right.
just want you to be able to look at the product. If you see value in it, if it does help you, if the value meets the price point and you think that's good, great. If you don't, that's okay. You can say no. Like so many people, like, I think they get uncomfortable if you put them in a situation where they feel like they should say no, but they know you, so they don't want to say no. So content communication has made that a little bit simpler, just to let people know in a more non-threatening way. Um, but yeah, I'm still trying to figure out the right balance of just, all the content that I post is brand build, because it's showing something about who I am, and what I'm about. But then, like, how much marketing, how much targeted stuff do I put in there? That's something that I'm still working out.
Right. Yeah. Is that something that, like, because I before I started this business, I thought a lot about, well, I have franchise experience. I could probably leverage that and get into
Mhm.
another franchise and stuff. But really, like, I had seen the initial effects of COVID. And I don't know what it's like over there in Wisconsin, but in Portland, it is completely insane.
Oh man.
Um, so
I've heard some things. Yeah.
we still have forced mask mandates here,
Mhm.
and our governor is in the process of trying to make a permanent mask mandate here. So
Man.
it's pretty crazy.
Mhm.
Um, not to, you can edit that out, whatever. Um,
do,
not for my
do you
sake,
want me to? Do you
but
need me to?
no. Oh, no.
Okay.
Just if you feel uncomfortable with any, if I go too crazy on any of this, you can, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Okay. No,
I'm fine. But uh, one of the, so I saw it coming. We
mhm,
ended up actually planning a church at the beginning of COVID as well, for the same reasons.
mhm,
Where we told our elders, we're like, this isn't the last time they're going to shut our church down. Like,
mhm,
we got to get ahead of this, and just didn't really happen. So we planted a church, and so that was a lot of the impetus of starting this business. Was I was like, we need uh we need to be able to protect people.
yeah.
Like, that was, I was like, if I go and work for Nike, if I go, get a great cush gig there, say I have all this corporate experience in management, and I'm going to go work for Nike. They've got a big headquarters in Portland. The
Right.
moment
Right.
I post, that Jesus is king on my LinkedIn account,
Right.
fired, right? And, like, that's crazy.
Mhm,
And all of my friends and family that aren't working for other local small businesses are experiencing that same type of pressure to
mhm,
basically shut up or lose your job.
yeah.
Um, and so part of the impetus for starting Pest Patrol was like, we're going to, we want to be like Noah's Ark. We want to be a
Mhm,
place where people can come, particularly young men can come that have families, and they can get a reliable, honest income with
mhm.
zero threat of being fired for the things that you believe in,
Yeah.
you know. Um,
Are you on Red
so
Balloon?
no, but I
Okay.
will when we hire. I will if I need to. But I've got a pretty
Okay.
good pool here
You don't
locally
need
that
to
I'm kind
hire
of,
right now. Okay.
yeah. But yeah, they're definitely on my radar.
Mhm.
But so I say all that to say, I wonder with your Amway stuff, I wonder if there are other sort of distributors long term, that you could look at that would more align with some of your visions and values that would allow you more freedom. Because
Mhm.
one of the things that I've been really interested in and trying to do more with our business is, Darren Doan talks about like just be who you are. The right people will come and
Yeah.
come around that.
Hmm.
Um, but it's hard when you have that kind of silent second partner in a business, either a franchise or whatever, where it has a limiting factor where like you really have to take that into account. Like you covenanted with them to do
Right.
business together. So
Hmm.
like you can't screw them over, right? That's
Right.
part of
Right.
you being honest as a businessman and having integrity. Um, and so yeah, so you've probably already thought that through, but I would just like if that is a pressure point, there may be options that you could look at that would allow more freedom to
Hmm.
just be, I don't more aggressively you, if that would,
Right. Right.
and I think that that would actually have an exponentially drawing effect on people,
Hmm.
on the people I think that you want to have following you.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I don't feel any. I mean, there's two things I'll comment on. I don't really feel any constraints about my ability to be able to post things,
oh,
to
good. Okay.
communicate who I am and what I'm about. It's just when it comes to posting things about Amway in particular, products in particular,
Yeah. That's
that's the
good.
only. I mean, so like they have social media guidelines,
Right.
um, and there's very very few like hard and fast rules that I've come across, and most of those aren't creating issues for me at all. Um,
Great.
it's more of something that I just need to look at a little bit more closely, figure out, make sure I do know and understand the difference between like, this is a guideline, this is what we prefer versus like, this will get you in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
not too concerned about that. I have thought about
That's good.
other things or other, potential suppliers if I needed to go that route. Are you familiar with Ben Greenfield?
Yeah.
So his company Keon is one that's one that might um I'm not sure quite how it works, but I think there is some kind of affiliate program that he uses and utilizes. I don't know nearly how. I haven't investigated enough to know how it compares to Amway's compensation plan and what you can do there if you're able to um to kind of use a franchise model, like if you're able to like basically start other franchise by enrolling other people to be able to be distributors, or if
Right.
it's just a straight sales affiliate, just like you can market the product yourself. But I have
Yeah.
in my news feed these other random people who have sponsored Keon ads that they're obviously representing the product themselves too. But
Mm,
um, and
interesting.
that's obviously I think he's obviously a little bit more willing and open to the way that he's running his company to be able to allow people to do stuff like that. But I haven't
Yeah.
looked at it that closely, but it is something that's like, maybe like if I needed to, that's something that I would
Yeah,
look at.
but it sounds like you're not necessarily having to deal with, you know, as much of those constraints. Like if they're still cool with you posting personally about stuff,
Oh yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's hard. That's really interesting. I've never even thought about. I've just never had a product. I've never sold a product before, so that's kind of
Hmm.
unique. You know.
Yeah, and I've found the way in which I want to do it. And again, that came by doing, because I've encountered other companies and the way other people do things, and it's just it seems to be either people go the route of trying to leverage the relationship to sell their product, or they have to hype the product so much, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, if I don't necessarily get like this insane result from this that I can then post, on Transformation Tuesday, like on my before and after photo or whatever. It's
Right.
like,
Right.
is there any other way that I can market a product? And for me, it's just been like, okay, there's a ton of different products and different realms of products that Amway has. I mean, they're huge in that regard. So there's plenty of opportunity for me to find some that I like in different parts of my daily life, and
Yeah.
just talk about like, this is a product that I use. This is what I like about it. This is why I use it. It's like, okay, I can
Yep.
do that. I can do that. And
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to go about that by posting on social media than to like set up a sales call and act that
Yeah.
casual about it.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I've always been put off by some of the network marketing, candles or jewelry or whatever. And you inevitably get like the Facebook message from the person you haven't heard from in,
Right.
7 years. And they're like, hey, come to my party. Like, oh gosh. And then you don't respond, and then they follow you like a follow-up message. You're like, come on, we haven't talked with you. So yeah, I think the more organic way is just so much better. And yeah, I've seen a few of those ones like that you've done. I've been really encouraged by those. And I've clicked into your Amway store before. I haven't bought
Oh, really?
anything yet, but I've clicked in there from those, videos, seeing those, being like, huh, what other products does he sell? That's kind of neat. So I think that's a really cool model. Um, and yeah, it's like, if you're selling things that are valuable, then that's, that's great. People need to know about it.
Well, that's cool. That's encouraging, to be able to get that feedback from an outsider, and just to get a little bit of feedback. I'm like, I think maybe I'm coming across this way, but just to hear that, okay, people are, at least there are some people that are getting it that way. So that's encouraging. And I want to thank you again in person for that one post that you made, I think soon after we kind of came across one another. I mean, that was like, this guy doesn't even know me, and he interacts with my content, and he actually makes a post about his reaction to it. And it was just that, I almost said flattering. Like it wasn't flattery. Yeah, it was just a genuine, like heartfelt appreciation for the way I was doing things. Like, oh my goodness, it touches the nerve. So thank you, in a good way. It touched a good nerve.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the power of social media, man. You
Yeah, it
put out
really
something
is.
and it inspires a random guy, right? It's like,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
I wanted to, I thought about like sending like you guys a case of like our excess energy drink, just to like say thank you, and like just to bless Pest Patrol. But like, we don't really know each other. Like maybe that's going to come across as like, oh, like he's jumping on it and just trying to generate some business out of that. I was like, I maybe don't want to do that. But
That's awesome.
I would be happy to send your team a case of energy drinks if that's something you think that they would appreciate. But we could talk about
Sure.
that maybe after we stop recording.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, send it over.
All
That's so
right,
funny.
sounds good.
If I had gotten that, I would have snapped a picture and said, Mark is awesome. He just sent me a case of,
Dog.
darn.
I should
Well,
have.
send it to me and then I'll snap a picture and post about
Okay. Okay.
it.
Sounds good. That's good.
That's great.
All righty. Well, that's probably all I had for today. If there's anything else you wanted I mean, I'm fine answering questions too, but want to respect your time and family as well.
No, yeah, that's fantastic. I'm super thankful, honored to be asked to come on. And
All right.
yeah, it's been fun interaction with you
All
on
right. Sounds
socials,
good.
and good to meet you in person.
Yeah, absolutely. This is great. This is a lot of fun. Maybe we'll check in again sometime in, few months, several months, and see how we're both doing.
Yep, absolutely. And come to the Fight Laugh Feast conference
Oh yeah, that'd be great to connect up there.
or Grace Agenda.
Yeah.
Have you gone to Grace Agenda at all? The
It's
Idaho.
something that like I've heard about, but I'm not as familiar with as like the Fight Laugh Feast conference, or like the rally that they did in South Dakota. Maybe just because I listen primarily to Cross Politic, and
Yeah,
like they mention it, but they don't like push and explain the details nearly as much as they do, which makes sense. It's like, this is
yeah,
our thing.
yeah.
So I mean, I'd be happy to make it out to any of those things. Um, just sometimes the time and travel constraints.
Yeah, and you're a pastor, so you've got a pretty consistent obligation weekly,
Right.
or probably a bunch of obligations weekly.
Some for sure.
Cool. All right, cool.
All righty. Well, thanks again. I'll hit the stop on the recording, and hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll check in sometime.
Okay. Thanks so much, Mark.